It has been 4 years since Specialized came out with a new Levo, and today we are very stoked to dive into the Specialized Turbo Levo Gen 4. There's a ton to cover on this bike. We just got it today, so we have not done all of our testing, all the hill tests, all of that type of thing, but we wanted to get this out as quickly as we can to give you our first ride impressions. So Bryce, let's dive in.
All right.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Bryce.
We're here with Electric Bike Report, again doing a first ride review of the Specialized Turbo Levo Gen 4. Now Bryce has done a couple lightning laps here at Zen Trail, and as a side note, Bryce, you gotta agree, this is one of the best trails in the nation for e-bikes.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's got a little bit of everything, a little bit more chunk than flow, but if you go fast enough, that chunk turns into flow.
Yep, definitely a trail that I like, an e-bike over a regular bike. And so he's done a couple hot laps, and we just want to get kind of your take on it. And let's start with the heart and soul of the bike. So battery, motor. There's definitely some changes here that Specialized has done. Tell us what they did and then give us your thoughts.
Okay, so diving into the motor, this new third version 3.1, which is a collaboration of the designers from Specialized and the manufacturers at Bros. They reduced the size of the motor. They changed how they mount the motor in the frame. It looks much more proportional to the bike as far as the aesthetics. However, the biggest standout on this motor is the fact that it produces, in the S-Works model, 111 Newton meters of torque and 720 watts of peak power. Now, they also paired that with a, in all models across the board, an 840 watt-hour battery, which you can tell is pretty beefy here in the down tube. Aesthetically, I think it just looks a little more proportional, again, than the other Turbo Levo. I was personally hoping for something that was a little more svelte and slim and whatnot. And I was a little worried with the size of the front part of this bike, how that would affect the handling and agility of the front end of this bike. After riding this now for a little while, I am so stoked with the fact that it seems like the weight of the bike is more centered than the previous generation Levo. And what that does when you jump on the bike and start pedaling, you might be able to catch this in my ride quality review, but the front end, picking it up and getting over ledges, pedaling to manual up into steep technical climbs is a breeze. We rode this in the stock configuration, which is the head tube at 64 and a half, the high bottom bracket setting here at the shock, and the short chainstay adjustment, which makes that chainstay at 435 millimeters, which I was also a little worried about, because that, you know, when you're going up steep climbs, are you going to be worried about coming over backwards? I never had any of those issues. Again, first ride, but I really liked the liveliness that short chainstay allowed during these, you know, first couple laps. And so motor, super intuitive. When you need power, you press the pedals. You don't have to worry about adjusting your power settings nearly as much as you do on other e-bikes and specifically the previous generation of this motor. It's more driven by your feet and your leg power than it is the motor power. It's very intuitive.
Interesting. And so how much could you feel the increase in torque on the bike? Like compared to the previous version of Levo, what's your take on that?
So one of the things on the previous gen Levo is, like, I noticed that the faster you would spin, you would almost start to lose power, which in their power graph actually makes sense. This motor, you can push, but you don't have to spin to get the power out.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to be changing gears nearly as often as you would in the previous, but you can still use your leg power to adjust the motor power. It's kind of hard to explain, and until you jump on it, it's a little bit.
Did that help in kind of, like, my initial take when I saw the different, kind of that torque curve that they have, right? Did that help on some of these real techie, punchy climbs at Zen? Or where did you find it that it helped the most?
Yeah, that's you nailed it. Like that's the place, those are the places where I felt the differences the most. In slower, more technical moves, where you do need to be more agile and less spinny to get the power out of the motor.
Got it. And then my other question is, so this motor, they got rid of the belt drive, went to all mechanical and made it all metal, right, on the gears. So how did the motor sound, and did it, I mean, obviously it's brand new, so it's gonna sound better, but compared to when, because you've got a couple new Levo Gen 3s that you also rode, so how did the noise level compare, in your opinion?
The noise level sounded more like the previous motor when it's brand new. It's very, very similar.
Okay.
So but when that motor wears in a year, maybe 2 years down the road, it starts to get a little loud, especially at higher cadences. This motor at higher cadences didn't really get that much louder. And because it's got those gears versus a belt, it's probably gonna stay at that sound level.
Interesting. Yeah, they talked a lot about how one of the goals was to make that motor kind of a little more durable. Love to see, it sounds like they've got some plans for some, you know, if you do want to repair it, it's in theory repairable as well. So a lot of cool things about the motor. Battery, have you had a chance to play around with the SWAT system yet? I would guess not. We got out here pretty quick.
I haven't taken it out yet, but I did have a chance to just look through the bike at the shop yesterday. And yeah, I mean, it's super easy to pull out of the head tube. I mean, the tool's right there. You can get to it really quick.
Yeah, like for me, I was kind of hoping, oh, it's going to look a little more like the DJI, right? Where it's just that down tube super slim. But in talking to Specialized, they kept more and more, they heard from people how they wanted SWAT in their e-bike. And I mean, they openly admitted that that was one of the things that they had to give with, is make that down tube bigger in order to give you the SWAT, but also give you the 840 watts on the battery, right?
Yeah, and speaking of the battery, it's going to have a range extender that you can plug into all the bikes, and you can ride it with only the range extender. You can take the main battery out, and that's going to drop like 6-7 pounds off of this bike, which I'm really excited to test out as well.
Yeah, you're the only one that wants to test it out without the battery. And speaking of that, so if you do take out the battery, this is all axis transmission, and one of the coolest thing is it's actually plugged into the battery, right?
Correct.
So it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I'll get out and I forgot to charge the damn, derailleur. So this is really cool that it's connected in. First one that I've seen like that, and just really love that. Downside, if you're kind of crazy like Bryce and want to go pedal your e-bike without the battery,
or if you just want to take it to the bike park without any range extender or anything in here,
what's the solution?
Honestly, I don't know that there is a real solution, because you've got to disconnect here and then put a battery in here to be able to shift. But then you've got this little piece you gotta like tape on and hope it doesn't get torn off.
So bring zip ties.
Zip ties.
Maybe electrical tape.
Some tape, whatever. I don't know. I don't know that.
So it's the only downside, but again, I'm gonna say that's 99% plus people aren't gonna worry about that, because they're not gonna want to ride it per se.
And I am like, we'll do some testing on this, but I am curious to see how the bike rides with no battery on it versus just a range extender.
Yeah. Now, with just the range extender, they do cut the power down to 50%.
Yes.
So it's still more torquey, more powerful than the SL2.
Correct.
But the bike's gonna be a little bit heavier as well.
Yeah. We had a chance to sit down and talk with Joe at Specialized, and what he mentioned was you still get the peak power of the torque, but your watts are cut down to 50%.
I kind of, again, just a prediction, because we haven't been able to test that yet, I think that's gonna ride still really well, because what I find when I need the torque, I find that I need the torque more than the watts a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it is those really steep, punchy climbs that if I don't have enough, I just feel all the way to the bike. So if I've got 100% access to that, 100 plus Newton meters of torque, it's gonna be really fun to try.
Yeah. Another thing that I noticed on this first ride was the seat tube is a little bit steeper. The other thing is because it's a little steeper, it allowed them to fit longer dropper posts. And on the size S3 that we have here, which is roughly a size medium, that comes stock with 175 mil drop, which on the regular Levo on the S3, or excuse me, the previous Levo, it has 150 mil. So that's a 25 mil increase. And on some of the steep stuff on this trail, I noticed quite a difference in the position I was able to put my body in going down, and felt really comfortable and stable.
One more battery to charge, but that's okay. It sounds like it's definitely worth it if you can go for that spec. What other impressions did you have just riding it?
So as you guys know, one of our favorite e-bikes that we've tested is the Pivot Shuttle AM. And I was really interested to see how this bike would handle versus that. And I think the thing that stood out the most to me is that this bike and that bike they handle almost identical. You can tell the DW link is a little bit different than the horse link that's used on this bike, but when you put the new GENIE shock with that horse link, it feels coil-like, which is very similar again to that Pivot Shuttle AM.
Yeah, I mean, the Pivot Shuttle is one of my favorite bikes that we've tested all year. I haven't been able to ride this yet, but lifting it, it feels like it might be 1 or 2 pounds heavier.
It's heavy. Like you lift it up, even just lifting it up, wheeling it out of my garage, I was like, okay, yeah, it's definitely heavier.
So you know it's an e-bike.
But then you get it on the trails and it feels like it's 15 pounds.
That's crazy. So even through all the rocky technical terrain here, like, do you find yourself saying, oh, I wish they could knock off 5 pounds, or do you just feel like it's dialed in where it's at?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I can't help the weight weenie in me just thinks, oh, how would it ride if it was 5 pounds lighter, which is why I'm really interested to see how it rides with just a range extender, or even knocking that battery down to 600 watts, which lowers that weight even more, and seeing, you know, what the differences are in there. So I would not complain if there wasn't an option for either of those batteries, because it's an amazing handling bike, but I'm super stoked to see what it rides like on our trails with that difference.
Yeah, you know, and as we talked to Joe, he made a good point that they didn't want to put a bike together that was kind of skimping on certain components just to hit a weight, right? Like when I bought my Orbea Rise when it first came out, like the shock was not beefy enough. The C-post dropper was something like 100 mil. It was just stupid. So I immediately had, you know, 2 piston brakes, super thin tires. Like it was just, sure, they hit a spec, right? But I immediately had to put $500-600 into the bike on top of the $10,000+ that you're buying, right? And so I actually think, again, even though I was kind of hoping for a little bit lighter, I fully understand that I think they could make it lighter, but you're actually going to lose the ride quality. Like there is not, as I've looked at, I mean, obviously this is the top of line build, right? But as I went through all the build specs for them, there wasn't much that I felt needed to be changed out across the bike. Was there anything that stood out to you that you would change on this bike?
A lot of these, overall, no. I mean, the Mavens are amazing. The transmission is amazing. The wireless dropper, the GENIE shock, the Fox 38, all of these things, like they're mint, right? For me, what I would change are the tires. They spec'd a 2.3 inch gravity tire on this bike. And personally, I would get a larger volume tire, but again, that's a personal thing. I like a 2.4, 2.5, or even a 2.6 inch tire, and it adds a little more volume. And on some of these rocky hard hits, I actually dinged the rim a couple times, and you know, didn't have an issue.
It's what the lifetime warranty on the rims is for.
Yeah, so we're gonna smash this around and put it to the test, and then throw some tires on there that I would like to have, and then see how that changes the ride. The other thing for me is I do think, you know, putting a different tire on here would change the weight, which will in turn change the handling a little bit as well.
And so yeah, you would go a little bigger, and they did mention that they were going to spec with a 2.4, not a 2.3, but it wasn't done in time. And so I'll be curious to see if that's enough for you, or if you still want to go kind of to your 2.6.
Yeah.
But the tires themselves, they're pretty beefy tires. Like, they don't feel like, again, they didn't go XC level tires or light all mountain. Like, they went good tires.
Yeah, and this trail is loose over hard in a lot of spots, and getting this bike on the edge, you know, on the side knobs, it felt so good, like just dialed. It didn't lack for traction by any means. It's just the sheer volume of the tire that I would prefer to have a little bit more of.
Yeah. So I guess my last question, talk price, right? I mean, S-Works is not known for being the cheapest, you know, model out there.
Right.
So, but Specialized did seem to try to make some price adjustments.
They did. And I think that's just a nod. I mean, it's not a huge nod, and they're still expensive, but at least it's something. And for a consumer, it's like, well, thank you. At least it's something, as opposed to what most of us thought, that this was going to be, you know, the first $20,000 bike.
I know. Yeah, so 13.5, right?
They knocked down to 13,499. Yeah. So, you know, and previous years it's been upwards of 15 plus, and they've had founders editions even more than that. And so, yeah, this one they knocked down the price on. The other models down the line.
Yeah, again, obviously very spendy. These things are. I would still love to see some downward pressure, but with all, I mean, you really did get top level spec across the board. You're not, other than the tires, you're not gonna have to swap out anything. Is there anything that you haven't liked? Again, first couple laps, we'll definitely go in deeper, but is there anything that you're, as of now, that you would kind of maybe complain about or think they can improve on the next one? Other than the down tube, if they can somehow get batteries much smaller and lighter. Other than that,
I would have hoped for a more modular battery, meaning that, like, start with like a 400 that you can just connect on, like maybe in 200 watt increments. I thought that would have been cool. There was kind of some chatter around that maybe that was going to be something. I think they did what they could with what they had to make it as modular as possible. The other thing I think that would be nice, and this is not necessarily the design of the bike as much as it is the drivetrain, I just don't think you need 12 speeds on an e-bike. And I would like to see a little bit more, a beefier cassette with maybe 8 to 10 speeds that carry a wider chain. So the chain doesn't wear as much, the cassette doesn't wear as much. As these motors continue to increase in power, we're gonna see more, you know, more wear in that side of the bike. As far as that, I can't, there's nothing at this point, as we dive into it and do more rides and take it into different areas on different trails, I'm sure there's going to be other things that we come up with that we wish would have been a little bit different. But as of right now, first ride, I'm kind of on cloud 9. It's a great bike.
New bike day, always fantastic.
100%.
So kind of what I heard is they need to get with Lego and design the battery, because that would actually be really cool if you'd be like 4 and then 2 and the 2 and you get 800, you know, and then the extender. I haven't seen anything like that. Great wish list. Let's see if they can do it. And on the drivetrain, that's almost more of a comment on SRAM and Shimano.
Yep.
But I have also been wondering, why haven't they made a dedicated eMTB cassette drivetrain? Like, it makes a ton of sense to me.
Please.
Yes, please, double please.
Somebody, if you're listening, that would be amazing.
Yes. So awesome. That was a pretty good overview. So Bryce is gonna kind of hit the trail, walk you through kind of what, you know, just some ride quality, what it feels like on the trail, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up.
Red, black, purple. Oh my gosh. All right, let's hop on and see how it goes. Yikes. Okay. We are in trail mode. And I have to say, I was so excited to get on this and ride this bike, but I was also a little nervous. It's kind of been, I mean, it's been a long time in the making for this Gen 4. Levo, and then when we got the specs on it and started reading about it, and found out, hey, it's actually heavier. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about sort of my my thoughts on weight. I tend to be a weight weenie. Anyway, talking about weight, like, it is heavier, right? And I was a little interested to see how it would handle based on that. But we've also ridden on this channel a lot of bikes that are heavier, right? Like 55 and plus. With these modern e-bikes, weight doesn't seem to matter nearly as much, because once you get the right geometry and kinematics, that weight kind of disappears underneath of you. Anyway, so we're just riding this in trail mode. There's all kinds of different settings and new things on the Levo that you can change and play with, but man, just first impressions. I was hoping that the front end of this would feel lively and light. You guys know that we are huge fans of the Pivot Shuttle AM. Haven't had a chance to ride the Pivot Shuttle LT yet. However, that bike does have a very lively and light feeling front end. And first impressions here on this bike is it feels very similar to the to how the Pivot feels up front. And I don't think that has anything to do with the weight of the fork on the bike. The Pivot Shuttle AM has a Fox 36. This comes with a 38. And the other thing I was a little interested to find out about was how these tires that are spec'd on the new Levo ride. They're heavy, right? They're like 200 to 250 grams heavier than the tires that I normally ride. And you know, just wondering how that's going to affect the liveliness and playful feeling of a full power heavy bike. Anyway, those were my questions coming in, and we are now, what, half a mile up this trail, and oh, this is exceeding expectations. The motor is so intuitive and powerful. Oh my gosh. And it is quiet. Very quiet. Oh man, that section of trail is kind of tight and some of it's a little slow. And I definitely noticed a difference in how agile this bike handles at slower speeds. Yeah, so the other thing that I'm noticing just, you know, at first glance is so the bike, you know, with that shorter rear stay, it's going to lend itself to better handling. But that handling doesn't really matter if you don't have the power delivery in a usable way, if that makes sense. So we're in trail mode. I haven't even messed with any of the settings, of which there are many, both in the app. You can also just change all the settings with this new remote on the bike. But anyway, the delivery of the power is very natural, like they say, like supernatural, right? Yeah, it's an e-bike. How natural can it be? But yeah, it does feel very natural, especially at those lower speed type power moves where you need power as well as braking control. So far, color me impressed.
So that is our first ride review and impressions of the Specialized Turbo Levo Gen 4. Stay tuned because we are going to get out to work. We're going to put it through all of our testing, all the hill testing, all the range testing, and Bryce is probably going to wear these tires out in the next just couple weeks as we really dive deep. So make sure you're subscribed, you ring that bell so you get notifications when that review drops. And again, just stay tuned because we're very excited about this bike and I'm really interested to see how this motor does on all of those tests. So stay tuned. And again, from Electric Bike Report, I'm Justin.
I'm Bryce.
And we'll see you guys later.